Indama Jagama Swavimanina Pashyato Samyatos Tayo. Sri Shukadev Goswami continued, O King Parikshit, subduer of the enemy. After Chitraketu satisfied Lord Shiva and his wife, Parvati, he boarded his airplane and left as they looked on. When Lord Shiva and Parvati saw that Chitraketu, although informed of the curse, was unafraid, they smiled, being fully astonished by his behavior. Om Viginatarmandasya Vinanjana Shlakaya Chakshumitamyana Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Sadagora Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So we are reading the end of Chitraketu's response to being cursed by Mother Parvati for laughing at Lord Shiva's behavior. And this idea of karma leads into or is related to, the idea of cause and effect. Philosophically, we are interested, all kind of cultures, intellectual uh, endeavors, and scholarly pursuits are concerned with this idea of cause and effect. Why do or how do things influence one another? For example, in the modern age, this is the work of science. That, okay, we have some events happen, say somebody kicks a ball, and through the determination of the forces between the foot and the soccer ball or whatever, one can say that the reason that the ball is flying through the air is because it was kicked, and that, or that the application of force was such that it followed a certain trajectory. And one can give so many other examples of this causality. Why was um, such and such person angry? Or why was person A angry? Well, it was because person B insulted them. And it was natural that when a person is insulted, they will respond with anger. So we have inbuilt into our mentality, into our psychology, this idea of cause and effect, that actions or events in or situations in the past are the reason that things happen in the future. So we must think of what we should determine the causes of, because we can study the cause of so many things. And that is what various academic disciplines do today, is study the cause of this thing and that thing. What is the cause of this uh, very small, specialized um, event? What is the cause of this other event? But we have to consider uh, why to study these things. What is the proper subject of our study of cause and effect? Because one looks, if one is familiar with the academic world, one sees that so many things are studied today that it would be very hard to make a case uh, for at least for people whose jobs don't depend on studying these things. It would be hard for them to make the case that they actually matter. Studying the causes of the reproduction or the sexual behavior of the fruit fly, I don't think anybody would say that that is a good use of intelligence. But still, so many grants are made for this and so many other purposes. So, what should we do investigation into? What should we investigate the causes of? And one simple answer is the causes of self-evident truths. There are certain truths about life that are self-evident, that need no argument. Uh, of course, in this country at least, the phrase self-evident is most closely associated with the founding of our nation, um, where certain truths are uh, said to be self-evident. Of course, self-evident actually means that no argument is necessary to support the claim, which I don't think is necessarily the true for the claims that our founding fathers held to be self-evident, considering that there is a lot of ink spilt defending those self-evident claims. But there are certain claims or certain truths that are self-evident. One of which is the self-evidence of suffering. It is simply a fact that nobody can argue that suffering exists. If anybody does try to argue, no, no, suffering is just, an illusion, it doesn't actually exist. It is not a self-evident truth that people suffer. You can uh, step on their toe or punch them in the stomach, and then they will be, or should, if they are not stubborn, will be convinced of the self-evident truth that suffering exists. I mean, actually, every culture in the world uh, recognizes this truth. It's actually, nobody even makes an argument that suffering exists because it is that self-evident. The So we should turn our discussion or our thoughts to what is the cause of our suffering, and can we trace out the cause of our suffering? Because this chain, this web of cause and effect can be a bit complicated. It is not necessarily as simple as looking at the immediate, or what is known as philosophy as the proximal cause of the event. which is making us suffer. For example, if I'm driving one day and the person in front of me uh, slams on their brakes, and then I don't have uh, the ability to stop in time, so I end up crashing into the person in front of me, causing damage to my vehicle, which I'll have to pay for with the money that I have worked so hard to save, possibly also causing injury to myself. So, who is the cause of that suffering? Is it the driver in front of me who slammed on his brakes? Well, what if the uh, reason that they slammed on the brakes is because a child ran out into the street, and they have to slam on their brakes to avoid hitting the child. Is the child the cause of my suffering? Should I blame that child for causing my suffering? Or is it the cause of the inattentive parent who wasn't paying attention to the child and allowed him to run into the street, causing this collision? Or is it the cause of the uh, car manufacturer for not making brakes that are uh, powerful enough, or crash sensing technology that will stop your car uh, on a dime? So tracing out the um, the web of cause and effect of our suffering can be complicated. And so various intellectuals, philosophers have determined or uh, suggested various causes, um, since the actual cause is very difficult to determine. It might be that the cause of our suffering is simply the struggle for existence, that we have a drive to carry our genes forth from one generation to the next, and uh, that in the struggle for that, we are suffering by our inability to reproduce, and to attain resources for that reproduction? Or is it because we have some will to power, that we wish to become powerful, and we run up against others who wish to become powerful? Is it because we are embedded in a system of power relations, and that sometimes I act as the sufferer, and somebody acts as the cause of my suffering in the uh, kind of pantomime of these power relations between each other? Is it because the my tormentor has some psychological issue from when they were a child, and I don't know, their parents didn't talk to them the right way or something? So many theories of what is the actual cause of our suffering. And in this verse, we are understanding what the actual truth is. What actually is the cause of our suffering? And the answer is ourself. We shouldn't think that others uh, whether the collective others in the forms of these social or political or any other institutions, or even the individual others, is the reason for our suffering. The only reason for our suffering is because we have committed activities in the past that demand justice, that demand a proper reaction. To borrow from the laws of physics, for every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. So the seeds of our pious and sinful activities were planted many, many uh, lifetimes ago. And we are reaping the results now. It is not that just because we cannot remember the cause of our actions or the reasons for our distress that we did not cause them. This misunderstanding of that suffering happens without reason is the uh, pretension for what many atheists say is the reason for rejecting God. And actually, even many theists, when asked, what is the best argument for mm, atheism? What is the best argument for not believing in God? They say the problem of evil, which is basically why do bad things happen to people? But just because we weren't there in the courtroom doesn't mean that the uh, judgment was not just. I could see somebody uh, being hanged, for instance, and I might think, oh, who are these rascals that are hanging this person? Why are they killing him? They're committing sinful activities by destroying this man's life. But then I might be informed, no, 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 this man is a murderer. He, murdered his neighbor for, over an argument or for some material gain, and therefore he must be hanged. And then the understanding is that, oh, this is proper. This is a very nice application of justice. That even though I was personally not in the courtroom, uh, that those who commit activities which are against the laws, either the laws of man or the laws of God, must be punished according to those laws. We should not necessarily even think that we are qualified to be in the courtroom, since it is happening at the court of Yamaraj is at a level far above our our qualification. But we should understand that uh, higher personalities have made the judgment, and that all of the results of our past activities are coming to us. And therefore, we should not have anger towards those who have mistreated us. It is a common response in this material world to consider those who have done wrong to us are enemies. That, this person has done wrong to me, and therefore I will uh, consider them as totally acting against my interests. That I'm justified in, angry or envious towards this person because they have done something wrong to me. And this mentality works both on the personal level and on, you see, when people come together on the collective level as well. Oh, you know, during the First World War, these Jewish people have colluded with our enemies, and therefore they are also our enemy. So we will take care of this um, issue in our society. We will make a solution to this enemy within our society. And so many other examples throughout history and throughout our personal lives. We consider that others are the cause of our happiness and distress. And this turns into the mentality of friends and enemies, that those who are friends or those who are causes of my happiness are my friends, and those who are the causes of my distress are my enemies. And I will act with those who I consider my friends in one way, and we will have our own little group that we will all act for each other's sense gratification, and we will uh, act against those who we consider our enemy, because those people are acting against my best interest, which is to say, they are acting against my sense gratification. But we should not have this mentality. We can understand that actually, when we suffer the results of our previous activities, even on the material platform, and not even bringing in transcendental consciousness, we can understand that actually we should be relieved. If somebody paid off a debt, say somebody had student loans or a mortgage or a car payment, and then after years of labor, hard work, etc., they finally paid off uh, this debt. The feeling that usually comes is relief. Maybe even others who are connected with this person will say, this is such a good thing for you to have that has happened. And it's such a good thing that has happened. You have paid off the debt, and now you don't have to worry about it anymore. And when somebody collects the debt, uh, we feel like, oh, they have taken on so much burden. So we could also view karmic debts the same way. I am suffering because I owe a debt uh, to others, that in my previous lives I've generated this debt, and it's simply in this life that I've paid it off. And now that I've dealt with it, dealt with this suffering, I'm free. I don't have to deal with it anymore in this life or my future lives. And going one step further, we should, uh, you know, we can also see from the stage of transcendental consciousness that what actually is for the benefit of ourselves and others. Because even with this identifying as, oh, this person is the cause of my distress, can be detrimental for our spiritual advancement because uh, spiritual advancement ultimately depends on the attitude of the practitioner. And if we have the attitude of this person is the cause of my suffering, this person, even in devotional service, oh, this person uh, isn't keeping the ashram in the proper standard, or this person didn't do their service correctly, so now I'm having to uh, suffer the brunt of that, or this person didn't communicate with me, uh, and so now there's some confusion that resulted. We can see these other persons as the cause of our distress. And while it can be uh, useful and sometimes even proper to bring up certain things in order to help people do their service better, if we develop this mentality of fault finding, this person has done, this devotee has done something bad to me. Uh, and I will just hold anger against them, maybe complain to my friends about them. And this other devotee has also done something bad to me, and I'll also complain about him. And this complaining consciousness is horrible for our devotional service. It will actually cause you to leave devotional service. There have been many cases of this on small and large scales. Maybe some of the more senior devotees in the online Sangha here can think of examples that they know personally or have seen in our society. People who have just been invested in this complaining consciousness and then have left the association of devotees, which makes sense because if the only thing that you're saying is these devotees are causes of distress for me, why would you stick around? Uh, just strictly from a material consciousness point of view, that we try to stop our suffering. And ultimately, this mentality of identifying with friends and enemies, even among devotees, uh, is actually watering the weeds and not the creeper of devotional service. Lord Chaitanya has given this analogy, and CC it's given, that um, there's a creeper of devotional service in the heart, small plants. Um, but this creeper is surrounded by weeds, which are anartas, all the unwanted things in the heart. And that if we aren't practicing properly, then it is possible we are watering the weeds and not watering actually the creeper of devotional service. So we have to be very careful about these things and ask, is the way that we are approaching devotional service, is the way that we are doing devotional service actually watering devotional service in our heart or watering the weeds that are choking and killing the actual creeper of devotional service? And actually, we can go one step further in this determination of friends and enemies. Because actually, the devotee has no consciousness of this mentality of friends and enemies. This duality is on the material platform because the devotee is always thinking, How can I advance in Krishna consciousness myself? And how can I help others advance in Krishna consciousness? That even if this person is so-called my enemy, it is simply because they are identifying with the Lord's illusory energy, which is causing them to think they are the body and that those in bodily relationship to them in a favorable way are their friends, and those in bodily relationship to them in an unfavorable way are their enemies. But that is not actually the case. Um, they are also uh, spirit souls. They're actually servants of Krishna, ultimately, who are suffering due to the contact with Maya. And so the devotee shouldn't see anybody, uh, as even those who have wronged us in even a very intense, dramatic, violent, or whatever way, as our enemies, but simply think, what is the best way that I can interact or not interact with this person to uh, increase their mm, level of consciousness, to help move them towards the actual position of becoming a servant of Krishna. So, this is ultimately the way that we should interact with others. How can we help ourselves, other devotees, and people in general become more uh, attached to devotional service, to the holy name of Krishna, to the books of Srila Prabhupada, to Krishna Prasadam, to all of these things? And in that way, we will actually cause an end to our suffering because we will, in this way, eventually come to the platform where enjoyment, suffering, friends and enemies, all these things are, in a certain sense, just trivia. And the real thing is devotional service. And one can see everybody on that platform, on the platform of that they are eternal servants of Krishna, and that whether there is happiness or distress or mixtures of both, uh, that it doesn't really matter so much because we have the joy that is coming, the ananda that is coming from our service to Lord Krishna. So I'll end here. We have about 15 minutes left for any comments, questions, additions, subtractions. I will. Yeah. Yeah, so it's how to deal with envious people. So the question is basically how do you deal with people who are very envious? And the thing is, sometimes the best thing that you can do for their Krishna consciousness is not associate with them. In the sense that uh, you aren't allowing them to make more offenses, because Vaishnav Aparad is a very, very serious thing. And now, if there can be situations where if you're associating with somebody uh, then even if you're giving them your association as a devotee, you can actually be causing harm to them because their consciousness is at such a place that that only will cause them to make offenses against you. And so you might have to cut that person off or avoid uh, associating with that person. There's also, so that's what I was thinking when I was giving that answer, kind of associating with maybe like a family member or former friend, some karmi who is against the process of devotional service. But also, this question can be looked at from the point of view of what about others who are also trying to practice devotional service, but are fault finding or envious of others or things like that. And the that's my advice in that situation is that a lot of times it's better just to avoid those devotees as much as possible. Prabhupada even says in the third canto that we should limit our association with devotees who are practicing devotional service in the mode of ignorance as much as possible, because it can be very detrimental to our Krishna consciousness to associate with such people. There are so many examples in the Bhagavatam and in other shastras and even history and probably in our own lives about the influence of association. And if we are associating with envious people, there's every chance that we might become envious ourselves. Uh, so even if it's other devotees who are speaking and thinking and criticizing in an envious way, sometimes better to just avoid and let the more senior devotees who have taken up the responsibility of cultivating others try to correct it and not try to, because the senior devotees are in a better position to give their association without taking association. Uh, so hopefully that is answer some thoughts. I see Dina Palika has a hand raised.
Haribol, thank you for this class. I really liked your points about who is the cause of my suffering. You know, is it the child that ran out into the road or the parent? Or yeah, it was a really made me think. And my question was just on the point you were making before taking questions, which was just encouraging each other in bhakti. And yeah, I mean, that's what I took from it. And so I was thinking about how you were speaking earlier about complaining consciousness and just have the thought that in terms of encouraging and inspiring one another, it seems like sweet dealings amongst the devotees is very one of the best ways to do that. Um, and I was just wondering if you could, yeah, speak on that a little bit more, like the nice, just personal dealings amongst the devotees versus, or maybe somehow it's related to, um, yeah, sometimes devotees just like complaining about each other or like that. So do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, so in the Nectar of Instruction, um, Srila Rupa Goswami gives the six loving exchanges between devotees, which I'm pretty sure most, if not everybody, is aware of. Uh, and Prabhupada mentions in the purport that the reason that the Hare Krishna movement was founded was to facilitate these six loving exchanges. So, I was actually thinking about this point yesterday of devotee association and uh, how it's not always uh, that, just hanging out with devotees is sadhu sangha. As if we're engaged in material activities or criticizing or things like that, we might call it associated with other devotees, but uh, actual association with devotees is uh, hearing and chanting about Krishna, doing service, performing these six loving exchanges. And actually, this will actually have the mm, effect of whatever issues uh, are there in the association of devotees um, won't be such a big deal. Uh, by because there's always some issues in the material world. Every endeavor is covered with some fault. But if we actually are acting on a platform by performing the nine processes of devotional service and the six loving exchanges in relationship with other devotees, then so the problems uh, are not uh, so salient in our mind. We might recognize them, but it's like, oh, okay, that's just how this devotee is, and we'll work around it. It's not such a big deal. Um, so yeah, we should try to prioritize these six loving exchanges and the nine processes of devotional service. And this is actually what will uh, bring us together as a community, and will actually have us uh, develop those relationships that we might find lacking. And actually, I'll also say if you're having a bad time in the association of devotees, if you feel that there's some issue, the cause uh, is likely that you're not hearing and chanting enough, um, and
Okay.
that you're not engaging in
Mm.
these sweet relationships with devotees enough. Because ultimately, um, by acting on this platform, we become happy in Krishna consciousness. Uh, so hopefully that is satisfying your query.
That was brilliant. I really liked your point that sadhu sangha isn't just, hanging out with devote. I mean, it could include that, having some recreation, but the basis is hearing and chanting. And I've heard Gurudev make that point too, that it's not like gossiping with devotees isn't exactly sadhu sangha. Um,
Yeah,
and I was thinking you're such a good example. Like I've noticed, I mean, I'm not there, but I can hear you ask in Bhagavatam class, like seems like you're attending quite a few of the Bhagavatam classes. And yeah, I was like, well, he's speaking it and he's also doing it. So thank you for your example as well. And just a really brilliant answer. I got a lot out of it. Thank you.
thank you. Tarka Prabhu, you have the floor for the last few minutes of class, at least.
Krishna, I have a bunch of thoughts about your class, and I want to thank you for a very nice class. But this last issue about dealing with the envious is really critical. It is absolutely our principle that um, envious individuals are to be avoided as far as possible. Um, they can't be avoided, then they should be smashed verbally, corrected, but if possible. But very important to avoid that kind of association. Rather, you want to associate with those individuals who are devoid of envy and who are always engaged in appreciating others. One of the essential characteristics of a Vaishnava is that he does not see faults in others. He sees only the good qualities. So gradually, as a devotee advances in Krishna consciousness, the various anarthas are eliminated, and they come to such a stage of being only appreciative of the good in others, and not even taking note of the bad qualities. So when you encounter those types of individuals, that's the kind of devotee you want to associate with. You want to acquire those qualities by associating with them. In general, the principle is you want to practice appreciation of other devotees. You want to hear glorification of the good qualities of others and repeat them. um, um, that kind of kirtan is purifying and uplifting. But if you hear from an envious individual, you will absolutely be contaminated by that consciousness, and it is extremely poisonous. And as you mentioned, I can cite countless examples of devotees, even um, seemingly advanced devotees who had the direct association of Srila Prabhupada. There are instances of such devotees leaving Krishna consciousness due to a fault-finding mentality. And, that fault-finding tendency can be, um, it's insidious in the way that it works. It can be subtle, um, but if you have that kind of mentality, you can even apply it towards your own spiritual master, and
Mhm.
many have done that.
Yeah.
It's absolutely cutting your throat. It's suicidal. Um, so strictly to be avoided by any means. Individuals like that have to be quarantined. They are very, very contaminating. Strictly avoid. It's an important principle. Um, Yeah, how to deal with them? You have to avoid them, and hopefully they will. Krishna will help them from within their heart. They'll realize that, geez, why does nobody associate with me? Um, and gradually they'll come around, but you don't want to become an enabler. And if you hear from them, you will almost unavoidably adopt the same mentality. And as I was saying, it's extremely poisonous. It will absolutely destroy you. Um, so I think we're out of time. I had a
Yeah,
bunch
and
of other things,
there's
but
there is a question in the chat. So Radha Ki Jai. So I
Jai,
can
Shri Shri Radha Damodar.
move to the Tulsi room if there's more discussion to be had. Try to get untangled. Uh, so there's a question uh, in the chat. Uh, can somebody ask Prabhu what's an example of being in ignorance? Uh, so I think this was in reference to my um, in reference to my reference of the third canto of Bhagavatam, the teachings of Lord Kapila. We're talking about devotional service in the modes, and the symptoms are given there. having a separatist mentality, uh, devotional service done in envy or anger or things like that. I don't know, maybe somebody can find the verse and the reference in the chat for those who want to uh, investigate more. Yeah, Yashadev also gave five kind of ignorance according to the CC: accepting the body as the self, making material sense gratification one's standard of enjoyment, being anxious due to material identification, lamenting, thinking there is anything beyond the absolute truth. So that's a different reference as well. So yeah, uh, Parker Prabhu, did you want to continue your comments or let's go for Darshan?
Um, I don't know if my comments are particularly important. But you were speaking about the complexity of karma, very difficult to trace out. I'm reminded of Bhagavad Gita, chapter 4, text 17. Krishna says, "Karma no yapi bodhavyam cha vikarmanaha karmanascha bodhavyam gana karmano gatihi." The intricacies of action are very hard to understand. Therefore, one should know properly what is action, what forbidden action is, and what inaction is. And then it gets even more complicated because we're also from one perspective not even engaged um, uh, in action because the modes of nature actually are performing various actions. If at least if we're on the bodily platform, we're in material consciousness. The actions that we think that we are um, executing are actually carried out by the modes of material nature. But because we accept that position, we identify with the body and the interaction of the modes. We have to accept the reactions as well. If, however, we understand that we are not any of that, I'm not this body, then the modes of nature continue to interact, and cause and effect may be there, but it doesn't affect us directly. We understand that we're separate from that. Um, what else did I have? Fault finding is considered an enemy, and what is in the seventh canto in the 15th chapter, Srila Prabhupada mentions in a purport to text 43 through 44, he says, in the conditioned stage, one's conceptions of life are sometimes polluted by passion and ignorance, which are exhibited by attachment, hostility, greed, lamentation, illusion, fear, madness, false prestige, insults, fault finding, deception, envy, intolerance, passion, bewilderment, hunger, and sleep. All of these are enemies. Sometimes one's conceptions are also polluted by goodness. Even sattva guna is considered a form of contamination, and we elevate ourselves gradually to sattva guna. Shuddha sattva, and then we have to transcend even that. And There is another mention of fault finding that came to mind in the one of the small books, Renunciation Through Wisdom. Um, Srila Prabhupada mentions there, says those who are committing sins like illicit sex, fault finding, and
Mm,
unjustified violence rarely attain spiritual knowledge or realization. So he equates fault finding with sinful activity. Sinful activities deepen the dark gloom of ignorance, while pious activities bring the light of transcendental knowledge into one's life. This knowledge culminates in the realization of Krishna. However, simply performing pious activities does not make one eligible for God realization. Only when a person performs pious activities and associates with saintly persons does spiritual knowledge dawn on his consciousness. Anyway, um, sinful activity is an impediment to progress in Krishna consciousness, and fault finding is categorized as sinful activity.
mhm,
Um, there's absolutely um, negative reactions associated with fault finding, and they are profound. It's and very serious, very serious thing. But there is practical application for fault finding. The proper
mhm,
application of fault finding is that you utilize it to find the flaws in your own character. You
mm,
examine yourself um, with something like a fault finding mentality. That's proper application to utilize it to root out your own anartas, but you never apply it to others. Um, except there are exceptions. The one exception is that if it's your responsibility to cultivate another individual in Krishna consciousness, if, for example, you're a spiritual master, it's your duty to find a fault in your disciple and
mm,
correct it.
mm.
But otherwise, you don't apply the fault finding tendency to anyone other than yourself. And I'll stop with that. You got two hands up there. So Hare Krishna.
Yeah. Hare Krishna. Thank you, Prabhu. Dusty Prem. I will.
Yeah, hey both. Yeah, thank you. I definitely some good takeaways from this class. Um, I was wondering, yeah, in terms of like management, because it seems like in management, it's almost like a license for fault finding and criticizing. So I'm wondering where that fine line is between like when it becomes over the top, like or when it's actually justified and productive.
Yeah, and it depends on if it's done for the service of Krishna or not. Like, if we're just getting some material sense gratification out of fault finding, then that's not good. But if it's done so that the service can be corrected, and that is beneficial to the devotees doing the service and the people in general, then that is the responsibility of the managers to do it, actually for everybody's benefit. For example, like offenses in serving the deities can bring very serious reactions. We hear stories, especially from India, of deities leaving. Of I know in the past times of Shringadev deities, there's been cases where entire villages have been destroyed due to offenses in the deities, in the service of the deities. Um, So yeah, sometimes in management things, fault finding is necessary. in order to correct the behavior for the good of everyone. But it shouldn't be done uh, in the name of material sense gratification. Just like any other action that can be undertaken in devotional service. Right, so like an arsonist burns down, uh, a uh, building or a city or whatever, and that's improper action. But Hanuman burns down Lanka, and that is the highest one of the highest levels of residential service. So it depends on the reason why the faults are being found and what's being done to correct them. So hopefully that is an answer. Uh,
Yeah, no, yeah, that's really nice. Like, I guess just takes that self-awareness to
yeah,
think like when it's beyond. I'm just, but the thing I struggle with is like it seems like maybe it's not even, but it seems like a function of like you know good mental hygiene. Sometimes you just got to vent, and like especially in a management position, it's like you you're kind of dealing with all these frustrations on a day-to-day basis.
hmm,
Um, and so it seems like yes, sometimes you just got to vent, like, and like kind of like get it out, like um, as a as kind of a therapeutic, like not keeping that negative energy in, and so you just have to let it out. And so I don't know if there's a healthy way in Krishna consciousness, not only for managers, but just on a day-to-day basis. Like, at the end of the day, you might be with your spouse, and it's like, you're debriefing about the day, and then, something objectively, if there was some, like kind of maybe
yeah,
objective interaction with a devotee, and you just want to debrief and like talk about it, but then maybe that can sometimes come off as being offensive or well.
yeah. It can be a complicated thing. The so I guess I was where my mind immediately goes to is why are you venting? Uh, I and I don't know if that's the best way to phrase it. Or I guess what is the mentality behind what is making you so upset or angry that you need to vent about it? Is it, oh, this person is not serving Krishna properly, and therefore, there's some uh, uh, negative feelings about that? Or is it, this person is not uh, operating in my sense gratification properly? Uh, are not operating for my sense gratification properly. Um, and in which case it can be very dangerous. And yeah, one might vent to one's spouse about these things, but it's not necessarily like license for, I guess that's just one of the complexities of the Grihastha ashram, is, relating kind of in a material way, like from a job or things like that. And you might have these material frustrations, but how to have that engage in those material frustrations without becoming fault finding is one of the things that grihastas have to figure out, um, which I'm not necessarily qualified to give advice on, uh, at least not at this stage in my life. But yeah, I'm sure the senior married people on the call can tell you that the Grihastha ashram can get very complicated. And seems like one of the things where it might be like that. I know Krishnasuriya's hand was up first, but I think Tarka has a comment on this topic. So Tarka might say something first.
I might say something. I'll make it quick. Um, don't do it. You're a householder. You've got some pent up frustrations, whatever it is. Do not vent on your spouse. Do let me say this again clearly. Do not vent on your spouse. For God's sake, don't do it. You'll ruin both your consciousness. Do not do it. Hard and fast rule. Don't do that. Do not do that. You're just going to pollute your spouse. Don't do it. Don't do it. If you know that's not what your spouse is for. That's spousal abuse. Instead, sit down somewhere quietly, take a few breaths, and chant a round or two, or whatever. Chill yourself out, purify your consciousness, but do not pollute. Whatever it is. Do not criticize anyone in the presence of your spouse. You're just, it's like an act of violence. Don't do it. Don't do that to other devotees. It's important. You have an important responsibility to, yeah, especially you're a husband. Your job is to protect your wife, not to do harm. You have to protect her consciousness. You have to protect her from her mind and her senses. Don't give fuel to the fire. Whatever you're thinking, whatever is agitating you, sometimes you need to work it out with yourself. Your wife is not a vehicle for that purpose, because you will do harm. Don't do it. Do not do that. Sometimes you just have to, you know, just live with it. If it's something that's really eating you up, keep it to yourself. Or, maybe find some senior devotee who can deal with such a thing. But that's not for your spouse. For your spouse, engage in Krishna Katha. And as far as possible, try to stick strictly to Krishna Katha. As householders, there's all kinds of subject matters that you have to discuss as a practical matter. But criticisms of devotees should never be discussed. And not just in dealing with a spouse, but in dealing with any devotee, or for that matter, anyone, period. You just don't do it. Don't criticize. Don't criticize. Don't find fault, period. Not with anyone. And no matter how much you're frustrated, how much it's bothering you, don't bring your spouse into your problems. That's a very unfair thing to do. You don't want to contaminate the consciousness of your spouse. You want to protect the consciousness of your spouse. You want to uplift the consciousness of your spouse. Engage in Krishna Katha. Make a practice of, whatever is bothering you, make a practice of, before you talk about anything else, just engage in some nice, sweet, relishable Krishna Katha. Chant Hare Krishna together, read something together, repeat something wonderful that you heard, but try to stick to Krishna Katha as far as possible. And that's, it's a fundamental principle of Vaishnava behavior in dealing with anybody. You just always speak Krishna Katha, but especially amongst those individuals that you are responsible for. And married individuals are responsible for one another. You have to protect one another. So we engage in Krishna Katha, and we try to engage in Krishna Katha exclusively if possible. Sometimes we have to talk about other things, but problems that we're having with other devotees, it's best not to share that kind of a thing. It's you might feel better after having vented, but you will have done harm to anyone who hears it.
Hmm.
So don't do it. Don't do it. And I'm saying this. I've got decades of practical experience behind me. This is not just coming off the top of my head. I've learned a bunch of things over the years, and this is one of the important ones. Don't do it. Don't do it. You'll wreak havoc, and you might even wind up destroying your relationship. You bring your entire marriage into jeopardy. It's very serious. Don't do it. Do what you got to do, but don't do that. Don't do that. Not even as a last resort. It's a really, really, really bad practice. That's my advice. Hare Krishna.
Hi, Krishna. Thank you for your comments, Prabhu, from the trenches of the Grihastha ashram. Now, maybe you should give a series of talks or write a book or something about your advice for uh, devotees who are hoping to enter uh, that ashram. So, Krishna Surya,
Yeah. The book will be titled "Don't Do It." It's good. Yeah, thank you so much, Taraka Prabhu and Kala Swaroop. My goodness, what a class. Yeah, it was just hitting so deeply and profoundly. It almost felt like you chanted 32 rounds before doing this, like really just tapped in delivering some one great point after another. So thank you. So my comment and then question is yeah, I mean, so it's just something is sitting with me so deeply from when you had mentioned once we go through the suffering in this lifetime, we are free from it. So without giving too much detail, yesterday I was racially profiled in a public space. So
mm,
basically received some threatening words to leave a public area as I was getting some work done and using the Wi-Fi.
mm,
Um, so it- as a result of it, I was less concerned about the actual intricacies of the interaction and not really concerned about like fault finding with the person, but more concerned about how I would hold on to it, like some sort of PTSD of somebody like approaching me with anger, banging on my car window, like the sequence of what happened. That was the fear that I had on what would stick with me because I noticed myself like when I would get out my car, like, just checking my surround, just being just a little bit more on edge.
yeah.
But but what you said, and that leads me to my question. You said once we go through the suffering in this lifetime, we are free from it. So immediately when I heard that, it started to shift my perspective in terms of what I choose to hold on to, because perhaps I can have a different perspective on what I experienced, right? Like that I don't have to be fearful of continuing to experience it again and again, but maybe in that interaction, just by having it in this lifetime in that way, I'm free from it. So could you speak more to that? Like, how can we better understand once we go through it, through the suffering in this lifetime, we are free from it? That was the first time I heard it, but it was very resonant.
Yeah, so basically the idea is that, so let's say I'm carrying something, right? Let's say I'm carrying a bag of rocks, and for some reason I have to deliver these rocks to certain people. I'm just thinking of this analogy off the cuff, so it might not be totally perfect. Um, so handing these people certain rocks. And in doing so, the bag that I'm carrying is getting lighter. And that is basically what is happening when we are suffering the results of our good and bad karma. That uh, I suffered in some way in this life. Therefore, in a future life, or even later on in this life, I'm no longer carrying around that seed of the sinful reaction. Like because we're actually carrying around the seeds of all of these things in our subtle body at any moment. And the type of tree or the type of fruit that you will get depends on the type of seed that has been planted already. So, if you plant a peach seed, you'll get peaches. You won't get apples or oranges. Um, and but when we suffer, when we collect that fruit, we are done with that tree. So, uh, once we've collected the fruit, we don't really have anything to do with the tree anymore. We collect it and then go away. And then, our consciousness doesn't have to be concerned with that tree or that seed anymore. Of course, we might, if we ruminate about, oh, I wish, my peach tree gave me oranges because I like citrus fruit better than peaches, or I wish that it gave me more peaches than it did, or they're better quality, then we can continue ruminating on it. Um, but we don't have to do that. We are able to say, okay, I suffered these things as the result of my past activities in my previous lives. Maybe it was my last life. Maybe it was 100 human lives ago. Maybe it was 1,000 human lives ago. I performed these activities. I made somebody else suffer in the same way that uh, that I am suffering now in the exact same proportion. It's not like uh, human justice systems that, oh, what's the proper punishment? What's the improper punishment? No, the court of Yamaraj, it's always to the exact proportion to which we deserve it. So that when we actually undergo suffering, that it seems externally that it's bad for us and good for the one who is gaining from causing us to suffer. But actually, it's the reverse. It is good for us because we have dealt with the bag that we're carrying, and bad for them because they are incurring a debt that is that they will have to repay in the future if they do not take some atonement or spiritual practice that is capable of dealing with that karma. So we should try to see from the higher perspective. That's actually that view um, is kind of just a cultured perspective in general. That like you go to anybody in the Vedic system, whether they're a Jnani, a Karmi, or whatever, they have at least some level of that understanding. We actually go as devotees one step further and say, actually, even beyond good karma, bad karma, it's all suffering based on the association with the Lord's material energy. And when I interact with somebody, even somebody who has previously or even is currently causing me suffering, how do I deal with them in such a way that, first of all, my Krishna consciousness is protected, and then also I can help them advance in devotional service? So those are just some thoughts off the cuff. Hopefully that something was useful in there.
Yeah, thank you very much. And yeah, definitely appreciate the horticulture analogy as well.
Mm,
Very resonant. Thanks.
thanks. Okay, so I think we will end here. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai.
Thank you, Tarka Paru, for your comment on my question. I it entered deep into my heart, and I'm confident that that is very sound advice. So thank you for sharing
Jai
that.
Hare Krishna. Jai Sri Sri Radha Damodar.
Yeah. Thank you. All right. Thank you for attending class, devotees.